I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing, wings that make the tongue.
Hi, my name is Larry White, and I am your producer and director of The Inner Beat. The Inner Beat is a socially conscious program that sometimes showcases cultural events as well as community events. And occasionally, we'll even bring a little song and dance. So sit back and enjoy The Inner Beat.
Good afternoon. You're gonna have to excuse me. My husband took one of my key sound bites. It's the problem with preparing a speech in the same house when you get to hear what each other's gonna say. But I just wanted to first say thank you for offering an invitation to me to speak, and definitely appreciate the spirit and the legacy and the power that resides in this house. So I definitely appreciate it. Is it on? It's not. How's that? Okay. All right, good. So I'm going to start with a quote by Toni Morrison, because I feel like sometimes the words of our elders can help to center our attention and center our focus in a way that can often be really beneficial. And she says that the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Someone says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Someone says you have no kingdom, so you dredge that up. None of that is necessary because there will always be one more thing. Right? And that's sort of the purpose of racism in a way, is to keep our wheels spinning so that we are completely ineffective at addressing the reality of the condition that we are in. And from Toni Morrison, I want to move to one of my favorite jurists, Thurgood Marshall, who had a very simple, eloquent, and what I consider quite legalese quote, where he says that we as a people must do what is right and let the law catch up. And that, I think, really encompasses what a lot of attorneys, black attorneys, at least in my experience, come to realize at some point in our career that, and some of us realized it earlier than others, that no matter how much we struggle and no matter how much we engage with this system, at the end of the day, there is only so much freedom that one can grasp, and only so much freedom that one can grapple with and take and carve out for oneself within the confines of a system that has never shown itself willing or even capable of seeing you and your people as humane. Right? Or treating you and your people in a way that is humane. And so when it comes to whether or not we can teach our children enough to keep them outside of the traps, right? When it comes to whether or not we can use education to be a protector for our children from the criminal justice system, then unfortunately I have to agree with both of those who came before me and say that the answer to that is no. And we have to be honest about that, because I think a lot of times racism and us not really understanding the intricacies of race fools us into thinking that if we work hard enough and if we try hard enough, that something, some generation, some person, somebody will be able to do something that is going to appeal enough to that sense of absent morality that we have found simply is not there. And when we don't understand racism, white supremacy, Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. said, if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it operates, then everything that you think you understand will only confuse you, right? So when we don't understand racism, we think that if we get a black president, that will be enough to shift things, right? When we don't understand the way racism works, we think that if we get a black attorney general, the highest legal office in the land, that would be enough to secure some semblance of justice. When we don't understand racism, we think that if we get out the vote, and if we show up at the polls, and if we demonstrate that we're willing to participate and activate and embrace, when we don't understand racism, we think that civic participation is enough to produce the same outcomes for our people that it does for others, when we don't realize that when racism is built into the very confines of the system within which we operate, that there is no real hope for freedom if that is our only option. Right? And I think that we have to, I would suggest, recognize that continuing to attempt to find freedom in this space is not the best use of our energy.
And it's not really going to produce anything different than what we have already seen. And what we've seen is that it doesn't matter if we have a black president, it doesn't matter if we have a black attorney general, when they get ready to gas you and bomb you, they will gas you and bomb you and tell you that you rioted and you looted and that's why you deserve the very treatment that they gave you. Right? I remember in law school, there was always this question of, in criminal law, and this is usually where lawyers begin to realize that things aren't going to go quite the way we hope. And there's this concept called the reasonable person standard, right? And when you go in front of a jury, the jury has to ask, were your actions reasonable? Was it reasonable for you to feel that this particular person was a threat to you? Was it reasonable for you to pull out your gun and use it? Was it reasonable under those particular circumstances for you to act in the way that you did? Now, if you're George Zimmerman, right, and you're talking to a jury full of people who relate to George Zimmerman, it's reasonable to think that a black boy with a hoodie walking through the neighborhood is dangerous. It's reasonable to think that if he has Skittles in his hand, the next thing in his pocket must be a weapon. It's a reasonable thing because race has conditioned this person's reasonableness in a way that makes them think that all of us are the boogeyman that their society has taught them that we are. So it doesn't matter how much participation Trayvon Martin engages in. It doesn't matter how much Renisha McBride does or what she may have done during the daylight hours when she was being respectable, because at the end of the day, the jury looks at you and they see, well, if I saw you in the middle of the night, I would be afraid of you. And so it's reasonable for those officers to pull out a gun and shoot you in less than 23 seconds like they did to that young boy 3 miles up the road from where Mike Brown was shot. It's reasonable for me to go into a store in Ohio, in a gun store that sells guns, and see a black man holding a gun in Ohio, which is an open carry state where people walk into stores with guns for the purpose of proving that they have a Second Amendment right to be able to walk into the store with guns. It is reasonable for me to see a black person in a store that sells guns, holding a gun sold in the store, and shoot you because you must be a criminal, because it is reasonable for me to see you as the evil that I've been taught that you are.
Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed, no more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, boy.